All right, and we're back with another episode of Coffee. Got the coffee right here. Chaos. Woo! And Cashflow.
What up?
What's going on?
Go.
Well, first of all, guys, tell me something good that happened this week.
Well, I racked my mead this last week, and let me
Okay.
tell you, it is extremely, extremely good for my first mead I've ever made. I put too much honey in it, so it stalled out, which all that means is that it either capped on the amount of alcohol that the yeast could give, which is 18%, or other factors happened, but it capped out 18. I felt it.
Did you say 18%?
Oh yeah, dude, 18.
Oh, man.
And it's
Oh.
unfiltered, unpasteurized honey, so you get all the benefits of honey with your drink. It's great. I woke up feeling like I was 18 again. Like I wasn't sore. I was so clear-headed. I only got 4 hours of sleep, and yet I hadn't woken up that good in probably a year, honestly.
It's good stuff.
It sounds like good stuff. Wow.
Oh
What
yeah.
about you, Aaron? Anything exciting?
Let's see. Well, so in September, that's my birthday month, and I get a lot of birthday freebies that come through my email. So I've been cashing a lot of free meals, free goodies all over the city of Lexington this past week, which has been really enjoyable. And this morning was actually North Lime coffee and donuts. So I got a free donut and some good coffee there. So cheers to that. I've already consumed it all. Otherwise, I would represent, but the last it's gone.
North Lime donuts are really good.
They are. They
Yeah.
are. Yeah, they're quality products. And I know one of the guys that kind of got it started, so I have some particular affinity to them for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Infinity and beyond, huh?
Yes.
To affinity and
Infinity
beyond.
and infinity.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, as far as something exciting for me that happened this week, I saw an ad to start an AI agency. And I was in the middle of something, so I didn't have time to click on it and go through the funnel. But it's like, I wonder, is it like is it a Skynet takeover machine, or what? What is the purpose of this AI? Is it another, marketing agency? Like, are we going to see another Ty Lopez video here in my garage? Is it going to be one of those or what?
Yep.
Definitely curious about that. So I'll be going through that, and I'll report my findings in the next episode.
Good.
Cool. Well, guys, we're here today. We're going to talk about big ideas to business model. As entrepreneurs, we all have any number of ideas that come about, but it's one thing to go from idea to turning it into a business, and how do you set up that business model? So really, I guess the first question is, Eric, with you having been the, CleanSpace was, your baby, is your baby, the idea came to you, and I want to know, you've got the idea now, you've got your co-founder in place in Aram. Now what, man? What was the first step in bringing it to life?
Well, first off, I would say keep an idea, like an idea note, like in your phone or something, or a folder or something like that. Just because I've had so many ideas in the past, and I've been like, ooh, that would be a really cool app. Ooh, that's a really crazy idea. And what's cool is that even though I didn't jump on them at the time, it's cool to see, like 4 or 5 years later, the same idea is actually a reality. Someone else picked it up and went and did it. And that's the thing. I think, ideas aren't necessarily new. Like, just because you have it doesn't mean that someone else hasn't had it. It means they passed on it or haven't come across to them yet. And maybe the circumstance is why they passed. So I had the idea, and I had seen it being an opening and not being done, because obviously it's not. I would look for something like that. I wasn't around Lexington, so like, this could actually be really big. I wonder, like, yeah. So then, of course, getting down and trying to figure out what I'm going to do as I'm door dashing, and then the Lord telling me, I already gave you the idea to go, like, this is your successful idea, you just go do it. Like, oh yeah, okay, well then that's what I did. Head first, no business model, and you dive headfirst into it, and you kind of figure it out as you're, you jump off the cliff and hope that Lord will provide a parachute or some people to jump off to see you falling and jump off with you. So there you go. Maybe we'll all find parachutes together.
There we go.
But at least we're together holding hands with no parachute.
That's it. That is it. This is where the chaos comes from in the podcast name, by the way.
Uh-huh.
So, Aaron, obviously, what were you doing? Because Eric was coding, he's building the MVP, the alpha version of the CleanSpace app suite. What is it that you're doing during this process? He came to you, he's got this idea, and you're like, sure, I'm in, why not? Like, let's go.
Yeah. So as you know already, the software is an industry I hadn't yet been a part of, right? So this is new territory for me. So I was just wanting to come up to speed in terms of what's different here from a traditional business model. How does this entire industry function in its own place? And what I learned very rapidly is that it is an entirely different animal. The metrics by which success in the software realm are quite different. The margins are much, much, much higher than what you're used to seeing in a traditional storefront or service-based business model. And so and part of that is just the sheer amount of competitiveness in this industry from a global perspective, because software is much more global than, a particular service industry maybe that's more locality based. So I was just trying to come up to speed with that and get to terms with what are the differences here between what I have done in business and what I'm about to get into with Eric, and what do I need to know. And you never learn quite enough in enough time, but that's what I was busy doing, is trying to take a look at that. And then also continuing to build relationships in that whole sphere. And that's always been a strength of mine, developing good relationships through networking and through providing value in as many ways as I can. And so that's what a lot of my time was spent. It was spent in trying to learn what I could, how this was different from what I'd done in the past, and how can I continue to build relationships in this space so that we have a network to draw on and to build collaborative relationships with, so that we're not completely just the two of us, trying to scrap around on day one. So that was a couple of things that kept me busy.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. So for both of you, can you walk us through the process of how you developed the initial business model? What were some ideas that you had? And obviously, I don't want to venture too far into, what's proprietary, that kind of thing. So if I need to shift the question, I certainly can.
I have a thought here. Eric's might be a little different. I think a lot of these things, when you talk about an idea to a model, it's generally not something that gets determined overnight. It's not like you have an idea and then all of a sudden it totally flushes out and the next day you have a perfect model. It's actually a continual state of development. So we had income revenue streams that we were, projecting were going to be a certain way when we first launched. Those got adapted. They're different today than what they initially were. There are always some degree of change as you go along. So one of the things when you're developing a model, you can get an idea and then you're structuring a model based on your best projections of what would make the most sense and what's the most realizable, most attainable. But you have to allow the market to shift that for you as you gain more insight and you release an initial product and maybe the market says, hey, we don't really like this. What's called product market fit, which is finding out this is actually what the market's going to buy, regardless of whether or not that's what you initially proposed. So having some degree of flexibility as you get launched and understanding that things may have to be tweaked a little bit along the way.
Yeah, I would add on to that and say people make a big deal about needing a business model and needing to know everything up front and you have to dot all your T's and I's and all that. But in reality, you just have to get going and get started and get moving in a direction. And just like Aaron said, you have to be willing to uncouple yourself from whatever that direction is and be moved around based off of what you see people want. That's what you learn in e-commerce when you're doing the e-commerce store or drop shipping. You're always looking at what the trends are and you're always creating a product for the trends at that time, or what you see starting to trend. And so, you lose a lot, you learn a lot, and you're paying for data. And that data is the experience of not knowing. And not knowing is really valuable because you're not going to make the same mistake, which is huge.
So when as you talk about that and gathering data, what were some of the surprising insights or feedback that you guys received during this phase of developing the business model, trying to put this together?
So this might be a discussion we want to have a little bit more depth, maybe down the road. But when putting it together and developing the model is not as tricky as what ended up. I think one of our largest challenges early on was the pivot from a SaaS product that was originally launched into the marketplace realization that we are building today. And the biggest thing there is, we launched the SaaS product because we felt that there was enough of and there really is enough of a market opportunity to develop something there. But how quickly the market would be interested in changing what they're using or actually not using to create, to jump on something new, surprised us to some degree, and just that there really wasn't that much interest. When we get going back to product market fit, it just wasn't there for what we initially envisioned. So the numbers made sense. The need was there. You could say like there's a theoretical empty space in the market, but if your customers just don't care about that empty space, then you're going to have to move on from it. And so that was an initial challenge that, just kind of came head to head with what we had originally proposed, got into, and then had to pivot out of, which again worked out because we ended up dealing with a much, much larger market segment when we pivoted. But that's personally for me something that was just a good realization.
And that kind of goes along with, you said that you recognize there was a need in the market and the customers just weren't, it's like opening up a deep fried hamburger stand or something like that next to a vegan community. Like they might need it, but they don't really want it. They don't care enough. And maybe that analogy wasn't the best, but it's all right. What would you say? I mean, obviously the customer base, influenced the change to the pivot to the market, from the SaaS to the marketplace and idea and everything. Eric, as far as your original idea for CleanSpace,
Yeah.
how closely is the original idea that you had, the answer to prayer, download, whatever you want to call it, how closely does that mirror what's going on in the business today?
We're getting there. We're on the right direction. Okay. It's actually cool because, back when we were pivoting into SaaS, I knew that it was not the direction that the company needed to go. We had a lot of people in our network pushing for us to explore that. And so we did. And it really goes to show that sometimes you just have to listen to your gut feeling. You have to listen to what you know, despite what everyone else is telling you as a leader. And as the visionary, like, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to go. And sometimes you really do know that. And you can't really explain why sometimes, but you know that. And it's interesting to see it get proven down the road. But it's also nice because the pivot wasn't necessarily all in vain. We did learn a lot. As a team, we learned a lot. We grew. We met a lot of good people. So in that sense, I wouldn't say it was the wrong decision, because you can look and, in hindsight, you can always say, oh, I wish I did this, wish I did that, wish I stuck with my gut feeling. But you can't beat yourself up because you have to remember, I did do my best decision-making at that time with the stuff that I had. So you have to treat yourself with like, okay, if I was to go back then, I cannot go back then with my knowledge now. I have to go back then as if I was at the knowledge I had then. Would I have done the same thing? And most of the time your answer would be yes, because we are not intentionally making mistakes, you know?
Yep.
So you don't beat yourself up about it, but you learn from the data, you learn from it. You're like, okay, I should have paused a little bit more and figured out why I had this gut feeling and why, like, what was I maybe subconsciously seeing, but I couldn't consciously describe or figure that out.
And it's, one of the great things that I really respect about you, Eric, is your ability to, if there's an error that's made, I can't recall a time I've ever seen you shy away from that. And I think that's one of the most refreshing things about working with you, with Aram, is just the fact of like, hey, this didn't work, let's move on, let's move forward, let's keep going. Like, there's not too much of this, like, I'm going to beat myself up and wallow in just this misery of, this didn't work, crap, I've invested.
You don't have time to. You don't have time to do that kind of crap. Other people have that luxury, but entrepreneurs don't. You got to just get back up and get back on the horse.
Keep riding.
Keep riding. Like Mark Cuban says, you only got to be right once.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. What advice would you give to a brand new entrepreneur who has this idea and they're trying to decide what to do? What would you,
Go read a book.
Any particular book?
Well, if you like e-commerce, it's actually a really good one. It's called 0 to a Million in 12 Months.
Okay. What about you,
Yep.
Aram?
I thought Eric was going to reference How to Win at the Sport of Business by Mark Cuban, because I know he likes that one too. And I like that book. That's a good one.
You know a little bit more. I think.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you just have to sit down and see if you have a road to implementation as soon as possible, right? So you don't want the theoretical planning stage to be years long, but you do want to sit down enough time to at least map out and say, hey, can we get this thing off the ground? Can we get cash flow in a reasonable amount of time and have something that, could really at least sustain itself if it doesn't, immediately take off like a rocket ship right away? And just make sure your numbers are in the realm of reality, because I think a lot of people get so excited about a passionate thing that maybe doesn't make any financial sense. So it's fine to be you want to be passionate about it if you can help it, but you need it to make money more than you need to be passionate about it. So you might not get to do what you want to be passionate about immediately, but just make sure that you're starting something because you believe it'll make money, more so than, oh, this is what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. Because one will always make you money, the other one might not. So just make sure those are in order.
Okay.
Oh, one other thing to add on to that is you're probably not passionate about every aspect of business.
Yep.
So don't fool yourself into thinking you are. There's probably one particular or maybe a couple of the things within running a business that you actually find enjoyable, but you're going to have to suck it up and do all the rest of the stuff too.
Yep. It's good.
There it is. All right, fellas. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you much. This has been another great episode of Coffee, Chaos, and Cash Flow.